Is it time for the LA Kings to embrace the suck and snap their losing skid? We'll preview the Kings versus the Panthers and explain what we're talking about next on Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you like the show. And we're also on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today's episode also brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself with your purchase of a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com or use the code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jasemedical.com. Well, the LA Kings continue their longest road trip of the season, 6 games in 10 days, with game number 3 of the trip. They're in Sunrise, Florida, to face the Florida Panthers, one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. The Kings check in with a 20-10-7 record for 47 points. That's good enough for third place in the Pacific Division. They are 13-3-2 on the road, coming off a 3-2 overtime loss against the Tampa Bay Lightning on Tuesday. As for their opponent, the Florida Panthers, they are 26-12-2 on the season. That is good enough for second place in the Atlantic Division, third place in the Eastern Conference, and sixth best in the NHL with 54 points. The Panthers are 12-5 at home this season and coming off a 5-1 win in St. Louis over the Blues on Tuesday. Checking out the team stats for both sides, the Kings have dropped to 12th in the NHL in goals scored per game at 3.32. They've been top 5 for most of the season, but that offensive slump had seen them slide now out of the top 10. The Kings are still second in the NHL in goals allowed per game at 2.43. Panthers are 15th in the NHL in goals scored per game at 3.20. They are third in the league in goals allowed per game, right behind the Kings at 2.48. The Kings are 18th in the league on the power play, operating at 19.5%. They are number 1 in the NHL on the penalty kill. Kings 87% killing off penalties. Florida is 14th on the power play at 22.2%. They are 5th on the penalty kill at 84.4%. Checking the individuals, the Kings are led in points by Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe, who each have 36 points. Kopitar has been in a little bit of a slump, certainly scoring-wise, but Kempe has gotten hot lately and has caught the Kings captain as far as most points on the team. Trevor Moore also in a bit of a slump. He hasn't had a goal in his last 5 games, but does still lead the team in goals with 17. We could use a Trevor Moore goal and an Anze Kopitar goal and an assist coming up tonight. As for the Florida Panthers, they are led in points and goals by Sam Reinhart, who's having a career year, 51 points and 29 goals. That's second in the NHL, only to Toronto star Austin Matthews. Sam Reinhart is a fine player, but he is right now among the elites in the NHL, and he's not exactly a household name. So Sam Reinhart looking to make a name for himself this year, having a big season, and has led the Florida Panthers for most of the year, which is unexpected. Alexander Barkov, another big-name player for the Florida Panthers, their captain, he's got 44 points. Carter Verhaeghe, 40 points. And an old Kings rival is still there, Matthew Tkachuk. He is not having the MVP season like he did a year ago, but he is still a player to get your attention. He's going to do what he does best, go to the net, try and get you to draw a penalty, get you off your game by doing some things, after the whistle and during play as well. He has 11 goals and 39 points this season. Matthew Tkachuk, always a player to keep an eye out for when you are taking on one of his teams. Of course, we know him back with the Calgary Flames and his individual feuds at times with defenseman Drew Doughty, which I actually enjoyed. I won't enjoy it tonight, though, if we see him do anything to help the Florida Panthers. As for the two netminders, the Kings are expected to start Cam Talbot. He checks in with a record of 14, 9, and 4 on the season, 10, 2, and 2 on the road. He's tied for third in the NHL in goals against average at 2.20. He has slipped a bit to sixth in the NHL in save percentage at 922. It should be stated, though, that the official stats in the NHL also include players who haven't played in a lot of games. So backup players or even injured players like Aiden Hill of Vegas. He's leading in goals against and save percentage, but he's only played like 12 games this year. He's been injured for most of the season. So if you looked at goalies who have played the majority of games for their teams, Cam Talbot's numbers are actually a little bit better and his rankings are a little bit better. Needless to say, he is amongst the top goaltenders who are clear number one goalies for their teams, and that's why he was named an all-star this year. The Panthers are expected to start veteran goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky tonight. He is a former Vezina Trophy winner. He has a record of 29 and 1 on the year. He's eighth in the NHL in goals against at 2.45, tied for 17th in save percentage at 911. Kings and Panthers did meet earlier this season. That was in LA, a 2-1 win for the Kings. Kevin Fiala and Andrei Kopitar had goals, and Cam Talbot made 30 saves in net for the victory. The Kings at that time snapped the Panthers' 8-game winning streak. At that time, they snapped the Panthers' 5-game winning streak. Florida is currently riding an 8-game winning streak, so it would be nice for the Kings to be able to snap a Panthers winning streak again. Of course, the Kings are on their own streak that we don't really care for. Florida backed their way into a playoff spot a season ago. They should not have made the playoffs. It was only because, frankly, the Pittsburgh Penguins completely stunk at a time that they shouldn't have stunk. Late in the year, they lost a couple of games to lesser opponents, including the Blackhawks, and that allowed the Panthers to squeak into the playoffs. And to their credit, they made the most of it. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup final, where they eventually lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, I thought, as someone who covers the entire league doing a weekly NHL review show, I thought going into this season, the Florida Panthers were going to take a major step back. I thought that, again, they didn't deserve to make the playoffs last year. They squeaked in, got hot at the right time, went on a Cinderella run. And this season, they would kind of revert back to who they were. And I thought they probably would miss the playoffs this year. Well, I could not have been more wrong about the Florida Panthers. What they did was they took all that momentum that they got with their great run through the playoffs, maybe gained a lot of confidence, proved to themselves that they could play with any teams, all the teams in the NHL. And they have certainly carried that momentum over into this season. And right now, again, the Florida Panthers amongst the top teams in the NHL and are currently riding an 8-game winning streak. As for the lineup tonight for the LA Kings, it is going to be apparently exactly the same lineup the Kings had in their last game against Tampa Bay. And that means no Brant Clarke. And we will talk more about that coming up. I mentioned the Kings earlier this season snapped that Florida 5-game winning streak. Hopefully we can do it again tonight. But not only did the Kings beat the Panthers earlier this season, but LA has had success, for what it's worth, against Florida in the recent past. The Kings have won 6 in a row overall against Florida, and that is the longest winning streak for the Kings against any current opponent. But as a wise sportscaster once told me, statistics tell you what has happened, not necessarily what will happen. So again, same lineup for the LA Kings tonight against Florida as they had Tuesday against Tampa Bay. And again, Cam Talbot in net for the LA Kings. Can the LA Kings embrace the suck? It's not exactly what you might think I'm trying to say. We will talk about it next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, are you one of those people that's prepared for the unexpected? I'm not, but thankfully I have a wife that is. She's got an earthquake kit. She's always prepared for things. I kind of make fun of her sometimes, of course, until something happens. And then I realize how smart she is and how dumb I am. I know that she would love a Jase case. What is that, you ask? Well, the Jase case is a personalized emergency medical kit. It contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. God knows in the world today, you never know what can happen. And obviously, we learned that with the pandemic, and it could lead to supply chain shortages for medications. With the Jase case, you can customize your case and add additional life saving medications based on your unique needs. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family. Jase is continually working to expand their medication offerings. You can buy a gift card for family and loved ones so they can get a Jase case of their own as well. Just go to jasemedical.com and enter the code locked on at checkout, and you'll get $20 off of your order. That is promo code locked on at jasemedical.com, JASE medical.com. Hey, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering everything in the leagues going on. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And I'm sure they're talking about legendary football coaches, either on the move or calling it a career. That's been crazy. But anyway, back to hockey. The LA Kings, as you probably well know, riding a 6-game losing streak. And I'm saying it's time for the Kings to embrace the suck. Now, what does that mean? Maybe you know that saying, maybe you don't. It's something that I actually just found out about recently. A friend was talking about it, used it on his sports talk radio show. His name's Ben Maller. But anyway, it's not what you might think. It's not saying the Kings should accept losing. Actually, it is quite the opposite. So apparently, embrace the suck is a term or a motto that Marines and Navy SEALs will use in difficult situations. Obviously, if you're a soldier and you're in a combat situation, you know you're going to endure hardships. There's going to be tough times. There's going to be difficult circumstances, and you have to embrace it. When things suck, embrace it, take the challenge, and overcome it. It's actually, be honest, something you could use in your daily life. We all go through stuff in our lives. And, you know, what kind of attitude you have when those things happen, because they're going to happen, whether you try to avoid them or not, is, you know, how you get through them. So, look, the Kings are, and this is, look, I'm not trying to compare war to sports, but you know, there's some connections to that kind of thing. They talk about it in cliches, you know, teams going to war and battling for each other and all that kind of stuff. So in a sports sense, certainly the Kings are going through some tough times, some difficult circumstances, and it's time to embrace it. And that is to take it on and fight your way out of it. There is no better time than tonight against a team that's riding an 8-game winning streak. Now, if you're looking at mismatches, and if you're a gambler, which I'm not, by the way, but one team has won 8 in a row, another team has lost 6 in a row. Kind of easy to pick who you would possibly think is going to win tonight. But, you know, no one is expecting the Kings probably to win tonight. Go into the Panthers arena, snap their winning skid while snapping their own losing streak. But I keep thinking back to last season when the Kings went into Boston, not playing their best hockey, and they beat a team that was on a historic run regular season wise, got a win, big win at the time, kind of got them going, and the Kings used that going forward for the rest of the season. Well, Florida may not be exactly that team that Boston was a year ago, but as I mentioned, they were in the Stanley Cup final last season. They're as hot as any team in the league right now, and they are one of the top teams in the NHL. I know I'm a glass is half full guy, but maybe getting a win tonight is just the thing the Kings need to get back on track, build on a big win, and carry it forward for the rest of the season. You can talk about line changes. You can talk about adjustments. At some point, it's about getting pissed off and saying, as a group, we aren't losing tonight. And I would hope the Kings, as a group, have gotten to that point. I know I have gotten to that point as a fan. And again, it's not like the Kings are getting blown out of these games. They've been in every game. They're right there in the 6-game losing streak. 5 of the games have been 1 goal. They've been an overtime loss. There's been a shootout loss. The Kings are right there. And it's time to finish and, again, get pissed off, embrace this, and overcome it. Hopefully that can happen tonight. I did see a quote earlier today from Drew Doughty, the longtime veteran defenseman of the LA Kings. And this is courtesy of the Kings insider, Zach Dooley. And Drew Doughty had this to say about what the Kings are trying to do now to stay positive and get through this streak. He said, quote, "We had a long meeting today. We watched a lot of the good stuff we've been doing. Usually you focus on the bad stuff that you're doing, your mistakes you're making. Today was one of the few times during this stretch where we were watching some good stuff that we were doing to get our confidence back up and see that we are playing well at times, and we just need to finish the deal." That was LA Kings defenseman Drew Doughty. I feel differently about this team going through this kind of a skid if it were earlier in the season. If this were at game 10 or game 15 or game 20. But we're now game 37, and we have seen this group with this coach get it done against very good competition. The evidence that this team can compete against any team in the league and win games in this league is there. We've seen it this year. Just at some point, like I said, the Kings as a group have to say enough is enough. We aren't losing. Hopefully tonight is the night. As far as some keys for the Kings tonight going into this game against the Florida Panthers, I think number one, win the first period and go from there. You cannot play a complete game without starting off well. And I did see a great stat from the guys over at mayorsmanor.com. When leading after the first period, the Florida Panthers are 14-0-2 this year. When leading after two periods, Florida is 19-0-1. But when the Panthers are trailing after two periods, they're 1-11. Now, I know the Kings have been giving up leads lately, but that's some pretty good statistical evidence to show the Kings need to get a lead in this game and keep it going for three periods. For that to happen, obviously, we need to see something we haven't seen in a while, and that's three solid periods. It's not to say the Kings are always going to dominate a period. Look, the Panthers are a good team. There's going to be times when they have a pushback. There's going to be times when they get some scoring opportunities. But when it's all said and done, at the end of the period, we need to be able to sit back and say the Kings were the better team that period. And hopefully that results to the scoreboard being in favor of the Kings. Number two, take advantage of your opportunities. The Kings were able to get the puck into high danger areas against Tampa Bay, but they didn't finish as much as they needed to. Again, it's the details. It's finishing. It's finalizing your opportunities. Florida, a very good defensive team with a solid goalie. There may not be a lot of good scoring chances for the Kings tonight. So LA needs to capitalize and finish when they get those chances. If you have a breakaway, you have to score. If you get a key power play in a key moment, the Kings have to score. It's great to work hard. It's great to do the little things to get into a scoring position. But in the end, if you don't finish on that effort and on those opportunities, it doesn't matter. And finally, do the little things right. When you are struggling and you're in a slump, it is very hard not to want to do too much. Your heart's in the right place. We've seen the Kings compete hard, but you also have to use your head. Dump the puck in when you have a chance. Don't force passes in dangerous places when you don't have to. I'm looking at you, Kevin Fiala. Get off the ice for a line change maybe before you need to, rather than extend a shift and get caught out there too long. If you got a shot, take the shot. One thing we've heard about the Kings as a theory as to why maybe they've been so much better on the road than they have at home is that on the road, you're more often than not going to keep it simple. You're not looking to make maybe a fancy play to get the home crowd on their feet, that kind of thing. So keep it simple, make the right plays, and hopefully it all adds up to a much needed Kings victory coming up tonight. So why aren't the Kings playing Brant Clarke? That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Trevor Moore scores a hat trick and the LA Kings win the Stanley Cup. That sounds great, doesn't it? But you know what else sounds great? You winning 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app as the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you pick more or less based on goals, assists, points, saves, and more. And Sleeper offers 100 times payout 100 times. And although we're in love with the NHL, not just about hockey, you've got the NFL playoffs getting ready to start this weekend. The NBA's in full swing as well. Now is a great time to get in on all the amazing sports action. Make the right picks, and you could win big. Just use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. The LA Kings face the Florida Panthers today, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search LA Kings. So, as you know, the Kings recently called up former first-round pick defenseman Brant Clarke, who most Kings fans are very excited about as someone who is going to be a future star in the NHL. And I have to admit, if you listen to this show during the offseason, I was convinced that Clarke was going to be with the LA Kings from the start of the season, probably playing on that third pairing. I did not think Jordan Spence was going to be the guy. All due respect to Spence, I am a big fan of his. I have made no qualms about that. I've always had kind of a crush on him, and I'm glad to see him get to this opportunity. I think he's been playing well. But all due respect to Spence, Clarke seems like he's been ready for an opportunity. He obviously was just named an AHL All-Star. He was the AHL Rookie of the Month. He's leading the Ontario Reign in scoring. He's leading the AHL in scoring by a defenseman. So clearly he's played very well at that level. And when we saw that he was called up, we thought, all right, he's getting his opportunity. And maybe he can help the Kings get out of the offensive funk that they're in. He's a very highly skilled offensive defenseman, has a lot of skill, a lot of creativity. But he did not play against Tampa Bay, and he's not playing tonight against Florida. And I think it's pretty obvious to wonder, why call him up if you're not going to play him? Well, I have to give credit to John Hoban over at mayorsmanor.com. And please go check out the article that he wrote entitled LA Can't Afford to Play Brant Clarke for the full in-depth details on what I'm about to say. But bottom line is that the Kings are counting their dollars and cents, and this is a financial decision. It's not just this season with the salary cap, but next season as well. The Kings have several players, goalie Cam Talbot, forward Quentin Byfield, and others who have bonuses in their contract based on certain numbers achieved. Sometimes it's games played, sometimes it's points, goals, things like that. Brant Clarke is included in that group as well. And again, for the full details, go check out that article. But here's the bottom line. The Kings are on a long road trip, and of course, they need a defenseman on their roster in case somebody gets sick or injured. Now, if they were playing at home, it would be easy to call somebody up from Ontario. They're right there in the same building where they practice, even though they play their games in Ontario. And so it's easy. But when you go on a long road trip, you have to have, be prepared. And teams typically will have one forward and one defenseman that are healthy scratches that they can use in case somebody gets sick or somebody gets hurt. Well, the Kings decided to call up Brant Clarke for a couple of reasons. One involves Jacob Moverar. He has a waiver situation with a certain number of games played. If he gets called up to the Kings, plays a certain number of games, he'd have to pass through waivers again. The Kings just lost a defenseman off waivers into Tobias Bjornfoot. They don't want to lose another one. So that's a factor in all this. And also it is because Brant Clarke has been playing so well that the Kings did feel like, we know Brant Clarke, we trust him. He's played some NHL games. We obviously are a big believer in his talent. So we're going to call him up. And as a reward, maybe we get him in a game or two, but because of those performance bonuses that he has, could be this year down the road, we're probably not going to play him, but he's getting rewarded. He's practicing with the team. He's getting in NHL work. And basically, he's experiencing what it's like to be an NHL player for a couple of weeks. So that is a reward, a bonus for Brant Clarke, but it's not exactly the situation we thought it was going to be when he got called up. And, like I said, bottom line, it appears because of the financial issue. And again, go check out that article if you want the full details on this. Don't expect to see Brant Clarke playing for Jordan Spence once the Kings return to LA. As a matter of fact, it looks like Brant Clarke will probably be heading back to Ontario in the AHL. Now, all these things are unfortunate realities of a team that is spending to the salary cap, and this is something the Kings will have to deal with now and for the foreseeable future. And when Victor Arvidsson comes off injured reserve, that's going to add another wrinkle as well. So we'll try and explain it and stay on top of it as much as possible. But the Kings are trying to stay flexible in this situation, and they have capologists and people that are well-versed in exactly what they can do to try and make the situation as best as they can, because they want to have as much flexibility as possible if something does happen. So salary cap issues, performance bonuses, part of the reason why it looks like Brant Clarke isn't going to be in the lineup full-time anytime soon as it stands now, unless there is some sort of a major injury. That would change things. But again, that is the answer to the question: why is Brant Clarke called up but not in the lineup for the LA Kings? I did want to mention before we close out the show, today is the last day to vote for any LA Kings players that you would like to see added to the upcoming All-Star game in Toronto. If you're interested in doing that, go to nhl.com/vote. And again, today is the last day. So are we ready to embrace the suck? Let's go, Kings. It's time to fight through this slump, get a huge win, and carry it going forward. I hope we see it tonight. I'd love to talk to you on tomorrow's show about the Kings' big victory over the Florida Panthers. Let's do it, Kings. Let's do it. This has lasted long enough. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, tomorrow we will recap, hopefully a win against the Florida Panthers. And of course, it's another Kings fan feedback show. Get in your questions and comments on this team. You can send an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And as always, you can leave your comments on the YouTube episodes as well. And we'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, on X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings, and you could submit your questions or comments over there as well. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you on Friday. And as always, go Kings, go.